Last year, it was a month later. It was mid-July. July 19th, Ian Rappaport reported that Jimmy Garoppolo will be cleared by mid-August. This year, it's about, whatever day Mayoko said it, June 4th, that Brock Purdy's on track to be cleared mid-August. So here we are with a summertime QB reportedly going to be on track to be cleared by mid-August. The day after Rap Sheet reported Jimmy's going to be cleared, Schefter reported Jimmy has been granted permission to seek a trade.
Don Yee
making moves. A couple weeks went by, and Rap Sheet reported in early August there is no trade partner. 21 days later, on August 29th, the Niners restructured Jimmy Garoppolo's contract so they could keep him on the team, which at the time we debated. Does this mean they don't believe in Trey, or is it just an easy thing to do? You never know.
That was an insane day when that story broke.
That was
nuts. That was nuts.
2.5 weeks later.
Did not see that one coming.
Fast forward 2.5 weeks, and we were already kind of debating, does Trey have to win to keep his job? And fast forward 2.5 weeks, and Trey Lance is on a surgery table getting his ankle fixed. So it happened very quickly. But I think the part that is instructive now is the quarterback that's going to be cleared by mid-August. Once it became clear that Jimmy was going to get cleared, the wheels just started turning on what's the next move. At the time, the move was, let's take trade offers for him. And there were no good trade offers, and so it was, we'll keep him. In his case, they needed to restructure his contract. Obviously, Trey's contract is fine the way it is right now. But I do wonder if we have just witnessed the beginning of the ball moving in the direction of, if Trey Lance eventually views himself internally as not the backup to Brock Purdy, but the backup to the regional manager, Sam Darnold, then do we reach a point in September or early August when his representation is seeking a trade?
Well, if Trey Lance was like Jimmy Garoppolo, it'd be heading toward, if you want to stay on this team, you got to make like $1 million, right? Obviously, when you're on the rookie contract, the signing bonus, his contract's set for the next 2 years. Now, the fifth-year option is, whether it's the 49ers or everyone else, I think if we were all betting men or women, you would bet against his Trey Lance's fifth-year option, Team X, not getting picked up, correct, on the route that it's
correct.
On.
Correct. The scenario, I think, is either he plays for the Niners suddenly and plays well, or he gets traded before this is the scenario you brought up several months ago. He gets traded in October around the deadline, plays well, and then gets an option picked up.
I would say this. Tom Condon, who is, one of the top probably 5 agents in the history of sports, right up there with Boris, Rosenhaus, David Falk, right?
McGuire.
Mark?
Jerry.
Jerry. Is, I would say semi-retired. His son, I think Patrick Collins, runs this kind of the operation now. They had McGlinchey as well last year. I mean, they have a lot of really famous high-end players. Forever, they had a ton of quarterbacks. And Trey Lance is one of their clients. Not really their MO to kind of like, I would say historically, Drew Rosenhaus has been unafraid to get in the weeds, right? Don Yee never really did because he didn't have to with Tom. But I'd say with the Jimmy situation, they started getting flexing their muscles might be strong, but just, you saw last year, the last couple of years, like with Derek Carr, you get to a point where there's like a line of delineation, right? And I think this happens a lot in sports with younger players or older players where it's like, we either got to hang a left or hang a right for my own client. We got to be selfish about this. And this was my thing last year, like, let Jimmy go. And the 49ers just wouldn't. Like, do the 49ers, if Trey, because he has not shown at all an inclination to be, or inclined to ruffle feathers, and he doesn't have any equity too, are they just more likely to just roll with all three of them? Or if they could just get rid of them, right, and even do trade for like a 7th-round pick, because the moment he doesn't win the backup job, his value is 0, right? Even if it was like 7th-round pick, that if he becomes a really good starter conditionally, could bop up to like a 3rd or something, but it would be some crazy conditions. we eat half the money just so eventually like you also take on next year, right? His 4th year, and it's your choice on the 5th-year option, to me feels the most likely if they are to trade him. Because to me, his trade value, once he's a 3rd round, for his money, like he does make something, right? He's not like a $2 million player. It's like $9 and $10 million. And if you trade for that, you then are on the hook for the following year, even if you decline the 5th-year option, which again is not nothing. Like think about this. How many $10 million players do the 49ers have? And I'm not talking like their cap hit. I'm just saying overall. Not as many as you think once you start rolling through.
Didn't we look the other day and Trey was, well, where was he in the contract?
Yeah, remember, we looked at the cap hit, but if you just think out loud, like what Bosa's about to be, Fred Warner, Kittle, Trent, Debo, like it's not like some 13 players. It's probably closer to 8, right? Hargrave. It's not as long as you would think. So his cap hit, which because of the signing bonus when you're drafted that high, and ultimately his salary is relatively high. So to me, it makes him somewhat untradeable. So I hear what you're saying, but
But how do you acquire? Like, what I'm saying is, let's just use what the Niners have done before. And
I'm not saying they wouldn't let him, sniff around. Does he have a market?
They would.
Does he have a market?
They would let him sniff around. And here's what they would know, just like they knew with Jimmy. We already did the sniffing. We know the market already, right?
They knew Jimmy's market. Didn't they kind of do that in the draft, though? When it was like, we're not open for business, but people are calling us. Like, 100%. Bullshit.
That's what I'm saying. Like, just like with Garoppolo. Garoppolo says, I want permission. Like, okay, well, we already know, but you don't believe us, so go ahead. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't believe them either. Hey, I demand a trade. Well, we didn't get anything better than a 6 for you. Bullshit, you didn't. I'm going to go find out. Okay, you guys were right. You didn't get anything more than a 6 for me. But I'm with you. They already know what Trey's market is. Now, markets, what they were counting on was, remember, we talked about this a lot. People who watched the show or listened to the show last year will remember there was a lot of, are they just waiting around for somebody else's starting quarterback to get hurt and then they can trade Garoppolo to them? And the answer was, yeah, that's what they were waiting for. And then it didn't happen, and he kind of fell in their lap at a cheap price. So I think it's this. I think we use the Garoppolo situation and we just fucking take the thing from then to now. And we go, it's the same thing. They're going to take it the same way. But somebody offer him a good pick? No, they keep him. Does somebody offer him a good pick? Yes, he gets traded.
Jimmy was tradable if healthy last year, right? Because he had proven to be a starting quarterback.
Yep.
And remember, I think, was it the Commanders that before they traded for Wentz were very interested, but he was like the salary, or not the salary cap, but the physical. It was like, he can't pass it. They're like, well, we can't risk it. And then they went Carson Wentz, and it was a disaster. But he was 100% tradable, where I think Trey currently is not tradable for the same thing. Like, you'd be trading, take a flyer that he might be your starter. You might not beat your guy out. Who knows? Or at least Jimmy, you knew. Now, he had the variable, which ironically he still has, where he's just always hurt, which sneaky Trey has kind of battled some injuries as well, right? It'd be one thing. It's like, the guy struggled. If you just took a flyer on Zach Wilson, who actually been hurt too. But isn't it pretty crazy that you look back on that draft that was viewed as like this loaded quarterback draft? Trevor Lawrence, star. He's got a chance to, within this year or 2 years to be a top 5 quarterback. And Zach Wilson and Trey Lance they traded for Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson was never going to be their starter this year, whether Aaron Rodgers came or not, right? And it's pretty clear Trey Lance was named the backup while the other guy was injured. He hadn't even thrown the Nerf football yet. It's like, he's the backup. Well, actually not. He's competing to be the backup. That happened. That shit happened fast.
And that nobody else really, with a guy whose stock is pretty, like Darnold's stock, not at an all-time low. It's been lower, but it's pretty low, right? Now, the reason I would treat it, when I say treat it the same way, I mean, I would make somebody give me some, I would pay what they have to pay for Trey Lance to be on the team this year, because I think it's likely they end up on their 3rd quarterback again this year. And I think
if that happens, it's they're a 30 for 30 level story. That's fucking insane.
I know. And when I say likely, I don't mean I'm predicting it. I just mean, why would I be shocked if I saw the same thing just happen again that we just saw? And I definitely am not, we differ on this. Like, I am no Sam Darnold truther. Like, the idea that Sam could beat him out and just stay ahead of him the whole year, or that if something happens to Brock, Sam would just take over and be the Brock Purdy of 2024. I don't buy that. So I would keep Trey around even if he is entering the season your third string quarterback. You okay?
Yeah, I just had some in my eye.
So I know you look like you're getting a headache, which you wouldn't be the only one. But here's the other thing. I'm not convinced that I don't want to spend any. We talked about this last week. Long way to go on Brandon Allen, but that's the other part of this, right? What do they think of Trey? Do they think they've got another third quarterback they could put behind Darnold if Darnold is their backup? Maybe, but you trading Trey Lance for a 7th to do that?
I do think there is a moment on the 10th and the 11th that if Jimmy's health is still a major concern, that the Raiders,
whose health? Okay,
Jimmy Garoppolo, that when they joint practice could be an intriguing moment. That hell, maybe it'd be worth it for them to give like a 4th just for a year flyer if Jimmy, because they have no other options, like none, right? I mean none. So
yeah, the guy they had back up left last year.
Left doesn't make any sense for like. Could you see Josh McDaniels like Carson Wentz? Like to me, it makes more sense to take a flyer, young guy. Now the problem is they do have some ready-made veterans that are like you can win with, right? Like Devontae wouldn't be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty. I don't know if does Josh really have the ability to develop a quarterback? I mean, does he have the leash to develop a quarterback? I would guess no.
Well, there's the Knights headed towards Stanley Cup. The Aces guy
not only headed toward, they score like 4 goals a game,
setting records right now in the WNBA. No one's sniffing them. They look pregnancy controversies, under the table payments. They are unfazed. Mark Davis is going to be back-to-back WNBA champs, it looks like. So the Raiders are just, it's a hockey town. It's a WNBA town. You can't, in all seriousness, can the Raiders just in general afford to just be some irrelevant 5-win team again? Like they eventually in this new market, you can't just suck in a bright lights place. So at least Trey Lance gives you a lot of intrigue. If they were to trade for Trey Lance because Jimmy was hurt, I would be much more intrigued by the Raiders.
You know what? You just made a great point. Would Mark Davis step in if Trey Lance practices well in Vegas in front of the Raiders and say, I want that guy? I would not put it past him. Not saying that's going to happen, but there are 2 types of owners. Ones that will step in and say, you should do this, and ones that won't. And Mark definitely would step in and say, I want this to happen.
People think we're fucking around. Kind of are a little bit in terms of with Mark. But one thing that is a fact that I don't really read about other owners, he meets with Josh at the end of the games. Not like the next day in the office at like 10 o'clock over a bagel. Like they meet in the office when the game ends. If you told us that Jed was doing that every game with Kyle, we would be fucking pretty critical. And every people listening would be like, what is this clown show? Now, part of it is the Raiders are so dysfunctional, it doesn't even feel that weird. But he meets with these coaches, the head coach, like he understands like the coverage breakdown. I mean, what that is literally happening right now. I mean, I would say that's on the high end of meddling currently in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty crazy.
Because regardless of what sport you're in, whether it's Eric Spoelstra after a game, whether it's Bochy who's just kicking ass, usually when the game ends, the coach, the manager, whoever, like, are you in a clear-headed mind with what's going on? And he just has to kind of answer to the guy? Like, it's
not exactly answering to Al or John Elway.
Not even answering, but I'm just saying to like have some serious conversation.
Aikman said during the game that he wouldn't have gone. He would have thrown the ball on 3rd and 3, Josh. But stuff like that.
But Mark's not even listening.
He's not. He should.
We're just sitting there watching it.
When I used to do A's postgame, I listened to the broadcast every time, John. You get so much great insight. I think Mark should do the same.
That's true.
DM on the stream says, Vic Tafer said the Raiders' rookie QB looks good in practice. Yeah, they gave Aiden O'Connell number 4. What was the thing you sent me the other day?
Aiden O'Connell looks like he is playing Derek Carr in a Devontae Adams biopic. He does.